Hey there, cats and kittens. Welcome to Crossover Attack, episode 13. I am Calamity Eric Freshley, joined here by Hylian Hunter Davenport.
That's right, it's me. Korok, Enslaver, Hunter Davenport.
And, hey, guess which game we're going to be talking about this week? Who knows? Could be anything.
I heard this little indie game came out last week. So maybe you've heard of it. This Tears in the Kingdom game.
Yeah, maybe you have. 10 million copies in 3 days. Yeah, it might have made a bit of a splash. I know. I didn't even put...
That's a lot of money.
I didn't even put that stuff in the news, but this thing is fucking taken off. We also are going to talk about the Sony showcase that happened, and just kind of the overall... There's some follow-up news, and we're going to kind of talk about the overall state of Sony, and get into some news. But mostly Zelda, I imagine. So, let me start off by asking you this, Hunter. A game that's about 2 weeks old, maybe 2.5 now. Is it crazy to say this is maybe the best game ever made?
I think it's high up there in the conversation. I don't know, because, to me, I think this Elden Ring really make good points to be made for best in the world category.
Best what category?
Best ever made.
Oh, yeah,
I think this is in the conversation. Yeah, honestly,
it's just nuts. Like, I barely even know where to start. I put an embarrassing amount of time in this game. We're all nerds here. We all like to play games, but it's still like almost slightly humiliating to say I've put in about 125 hours in this game right now, according to my Switch.
Hey man, it's a good game. It's a really good game. I wish I could. I am at maybe 10 hours only because I've been working a lot, but this game is good.
This is kind of coincide with me just coincidentally when I've had an opportunity where we've had extra people at work and they kind of go from the top down and ask, hey, who wants to go home? So I've taken a lot of nights to go home and just play Zelda all nights.
It's that Zelda time.
Yeah. And I did the first 2 nights. I did streams on streams on Twitch that, I always try to upload my streams onto YouTube after. And this is the first time I've ever seen YouTube have an error say, this video's too long. You can't put a 12-hour video up on YouTube, apparently. So those streams are only archived on Twitch for now. But I've never streamed for that long in one day. And I think I did it 2 days in a row.
It's just that good. Honestly, this game is amazing. Legit. There are things that you can do in this game that amaze me.
Mm-hmm. It's a whole game of saying, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, it did work. I can't believe it. And Breath of the Wild was that too, but this is escalated up to 10.
This is that on crack, really, because it's it is an engineer's dream a little bit, because you can do almost anything. You can build things that are... People are making fully operational Metal Gears.
I saw that.
It's pretty crazy.
I guess we should say kind of before we dive too much into minutia, game's a couple weeks old now, so I don't feel we have to go tiptoe around spoilers too much. I don't think we're going to talk about late game story stuff or anything that, but we're going to talk about some specifics, especially gameplay features and stuff that, hey, maybe they didn't reveal before launch, but now it's been a couple weeks. We're going to talk about them. Mostly, I think, because the biggest thing that they didn't talk about at all, it shocked me, is the entire depths, the underground.
Yep.
It's a whole nother map. That's basically the same size as Hyrule.
It's funny because that's essentially what Elden Ring did too. There's maps on maps in that game. It's impossibly huge space.
Yeah, I can't believe they kept that a secret. We knew there were caves, and there are a lot of caves too. That's another thing, but we didn't know there was a whole nother Hyrule underneath the ground.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But you had mentioned kind of the Metal Gear stuff and just the fusion and the Ultra Hand stuff. It's crazy how this game lets you break it. I think we talked about that in the last episode, that we were looking forward to that aspect, and yeah, it's just every shrine and everything. It says, hey, if you get to the end, we don't care how you did it. It wasn't our intended way. We don't give a shit. You did it, so fucking you win. Go for it. And that's such a cool concept. It makes for the stupidest situations possible, and I love that.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy shit in this game.
Mm-hmm.
People building like flying machines and like orbital lasers to beat bosses, which is nuts.
And I'm here making the dumbest shit.
I've made some dumb shit too, to be honest with you. But honestly, the game is just so well made, and it looks great on the Switch. People are like, "Oh, it looks bad." I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. The game looks good. Like,
so I am. There's actually that's part I wanted to talk about later. Have you beat any dungeons yet or temples?
no, I have not actually.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. When you do start to beat like 4 or 5 of them, so Breath of the Wild, you beat a dungeon. I mean, it was a divine beast, and you got like Rivali's Gale and different abilities like that. This has something similar, but there's a twist. And I will say, when you start to beat a bunch of them and you get all the extra abilities, I am starting to hit performance issues pretty bad.
Ooh,
I know I'm not that troubled by them, because in a way you kind of expect them, which maybe isn't fair. That like, hey,
it's a Switch, man.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. That's the thing. Maybe that's not totally fair, because if this shit were happening on an Xbox game, I'd be livid. And this, I'm like, what are you gonna do? I want to talk more about those abilities in a second, though. But one of the things I did want to mention, again, I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about this, which surprises me, because it was the first thing that blew me away in this game, is how much more enemy variety there is in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild had, bokoblins, the lizard dudes, guardians, and there was a couple other things, but the bats, but there wasn't a crazy amount of enemies. There's like maybe 10 or 15. This has a ton more.
I also feel like the map feels more alive than Breath of the Wild is, because like I'll like go past like a bokoblin like settlement, and they'll be fighting the robots, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yes, that was one of them. I had some kind of like at the bottom here in my notes, I had kind of moments I wanted to talk about. There was one there was a camp of bokoblins and a camp of robots just separated by a wood wall, and I don't think they knew that they were on the other side of each other, because they were just, the bokoblins were dancing around the campfire and the robots were doing whatever they did. And I shot a fire arrow to burn down the wall and just let them go to war with each other, and it was awesome. I just sat back and watched. It was like, I used to do that shit in Halo 1 all the time, put the, the Flood against the Covenant, against the Sentinels, and that was kind of awesome to see in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even if we're just talking about the bokoblins, even they have so much more variety, because now they have those boss bokoblins, and they have bokoblins with armor, and bokoblins with, the backpacks that are carrying a bunch of materials. And every enemy group has different variety like that. There's those gorilla things. The gorilla things were the first enemies I saw. Well, I guess the constructors on the Sky Islands, but the gorilla things were the first enemies I saw that were not in Breath of the Wild, and as far as I know, we didn't see them in the pre-release footage for this game, so they just surprised the hell out of me the first time I saw them. And I was like, right as I got off the Sky Islands onto Hyrule, they were the first thing I saw, and it blew me away.
Yeah.
And I haven't stopped being blown away.
Nice.
I also like the weapon characteristics. Now they have, if you read the descriptions of the weapons, they have little things like the Zora weapons are more powerful when they're wet, and the night weapons do more damage when you're on your last heart, and just little things that make the different groups actually feel different from each other. Because, Breath of the Wild, they were all the same. A sword's a sword, a sword. Yeah, they'll have different power levels, but that's about it. Now these have those little things. It's not a big deal, but it's just a nice little touch. How do you feel about, because I kind of love these things, the Hudson signs, the guy holding onto the sign.
Oh, the little puzzle they give you,
Yes.
were like, oh, prop it up. I think that's fun. I really do. I really like those.
There's no way to tell how many you've done, but I've probably done like 30 of them. I love them.
I've done 2 or 3.
Okay. Well, there's a ton more.
I've done it enough that it feels, every time I'm like, I get excited when I see them, because I'm like, oh, that's a fun little puzzle.
I always stop at them. I don't always stop at the stranded Koroks. I'll mark them on the map, but the Hudson signs, I always stop and I always do them.
I stop at the stranded Koroks all the
time. But I do have some complaints. Biggest one, well, I'm sorry. not the biggest one. The biggest one is the dungeon rewards, which I do want to talk about. But it is kind of weird that half the characters feel like they remember Link and half don't. Even ones you've met before in Breath of the Wild, I've run across some that are like, hey, we talked a lot in that last game and now we're total strangers. And that's kind of a weird deal.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's like, it is a world where everything kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd remember the person who saved me space that well, to be honest with you.
But the biggest thing I do want to talk about. All right, so I'm going to try to be a little vague about this, especially because you haven't beaten any dungeons. But there were the extra abilities you get, and they're not just abilities. There's something else that comes along with them. They're great, or they're about as great as they were in the last game. You know, Raleig's Gale is very useful. Daruk's Protection is pretty useful. These are about on the same level. However, the control method on how to activate them is fucking inexcusably bad.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Okay, you've seen them then?
Oh, no, I mean, like, the controls in general, I think, are not great, to be honest with you.
Okay. You see, I've gotten used to everything except for these abilities. And it's tough to... It's tough to not say exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know. Yeah. How you tell me how precious you want me to be about... I mean, some of it was in the trailer.
I do know that the rewards that there is... Okay, do you want me to just spoil what I know? So I know that you get like a little party, RPG party, essentially.
Okay, I'm glad you know that because that's what I was dancing around saying.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, and I love that. I was hoping that you would have companions. I think that's fucking awesome, and I love that they just fight alongside you. What I don't love, each one of them comes with an extra ability. The way you activate it is you have to actually walk up to that companion and hit A and get him to activate the ability. In the middle of combat, when everybody's running around, that's fucking so hard to do because it's like you're playing tag in the middle of a fight because they're running around. They're not nearby, especially the melee ones, which most of them are melee. So they're, up close with an enemy. Not necessarily the same one you want to be up close with. And then outside of combat, it's the same button as it used to pick up items. So you'll finish a fight and you'll go around picking up all the different monster parts stuff and you'll be accidentally activating their abilities all the time. And some of them will blow away the items you're trying to pick up. And it's really fucking annoying. It's honestly, it's a thing that I can't believe they let slide in this game because, you get the wheel for how you pick Ultra Hand and Fuse and everything like that. If these abilities were just on the wheel, fucking problem solved. Like, that's how you do it. It's really baffling to me they let this go. And I think it's, the further in the game you get, the more of a big deal it becomes. Because, you get more people alongside. And trying to pick out, when you're walking up to them, and they're usually standing right next to each other. So trying to get, hey, I want to talk to this guy, not this guy next to him, but they're right next to each other. Ugh, I hate that shit so much.
Yeah.
I even made like a little mock-up that I posted on the Zelda subreddit about showing how I would like to work on a wheel because I got so mad at it. And also, yes, as you get more companions, the performance does start to suffer. That's good and bad. I do love having the companions, and I would love having their abilities if you could activate them in a better manner.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my biggest thing about this game that makes me want to tear my hair out. Everything other than those abilities, I fucking love. Like, honestly, that's the only real flaw that I have to complain about.
But Eric, they reused all the assets. They reused everything.
Oh, fucking good. Reuse them again, because they're awesome. I hope
it's the same game.
Fucking, I do hope.
Stupid.
I can't remember if we talked about this last episode or not, but I was thinking that I hope they kind of reuse for the Switch launch. I hope they put together a separate game that reuses most of Tears of the Kingdom to make, like, you remember Ghost of Tsushima Legends, the 4-player mode?
Yeah.
I would love for them to do that within Tears of the Kingdom. Doesn't have to be in the open world. You don't have to go big. Just make some, like,
It could be like a little like Four Swords thing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yes, exactly. They could even call it, Four Swords 2024. I mean, well, they wouldn't call it that, but whatever.
Four Sword Simulator.
Yeah, something. Yeah, so reuse those assets. They're good assets.
Yeah.
This also makes me think about the next Smash Brothers. Kind of in this most recent one, in Ultimate, we saw in the first teaser that Link had the Breath of the Wild cloak, and we thought, oh, they might redo his whole moveset, which they didn't. But they really gotta do it for the next one to use to make.
Now it's like you gotta. There's so much shit.
Give him all these fusion weapons, and I want him to use the goofiest shit.
Big hammer boulder.
Yeah. So I wrote down, and I asked you to write down some of your best moments in the game. One of mine was that Bokoblins and Constructors fight where I burned down the wall between them and then let them go to town. It was awesome. The other thing I had, there's some collectibles in the Sky Islands. And at one point I landed on one of these islands that I saw the collectible was on, and it fell. The whole island fell with the collectible too, so I couldn't bail. I had to ride it all the way down. And then I noticed when it was falling, they positioned it right over a chasm. So I was falling from the sky, through Hyrule, all the way down into the depths, and I couldn't grab this collectible until we hit. So I had to ride this whole thing down the whole time. And just coincidentally, it happened to be at the same time that the fire dragon was going down into the chasm too. So I'm riding this damn thing, and then I look over to the right, and the fire dragon is next to me, scaring the shit out of me. And then I thought, hey, before we hit the ground, because that's a long drop to go from the sky through Hyrule down to the chasm. Can I shoot a scale off this fire dragon without stopping and staying on this thing? And I managed to do it, and it was that was one of my coolest moments in this game. How about you?
For me, it's building stuff with the Koroks. So, I figured out pretty early on that, the game does not care how you get the Koroks across to the place they need to go. So, I was trying things like trying to build gliders and,
Yeah.
So, I got to a point where I could build a rocket. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go back and find a Korok and see if I can get it, to land on top of the camp of his friend. So I did that, and it made it across the way, but it shot straight past the camp and into a rock wall, and I had to build a boat to go get him.
Jesus, those Koroks are the first couple you see are fairly basic, but they can get to point where you got to get them up cliffs, and you got to get them over water and all this crazy shit.
I do appreciate how they changed it up, where it feels like it's more like an interesting puzzle now to do all the Korok seeds.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do that with the Koroks, and they do that with the Hudson signs.
It's awesome.
And even just the shrines themselves. I don't know how they're not out of ideas.
Yeah, it's been very good.
I guess that's about it. I'm at the point now at the game. I've received what I assume is the final mission. The mission says, hey, destroy Ganondorf. So I assume that's the final one. I'm not jumping on that necessarily yet, because there's a lot of other side stuff I want to clean up, a lot of other missions I want to do first. But I think I can now go fight Ganondorf if I want to, and when I'm ready to. I don't want to get more hearts, too, before I go do it. Oh, you know what? It does seem like the enemies hit a lot harder in this one than they do in Breath of the Wild. Have you noticed that? I'm getting every time I actually take a hit, that's half my heart's gone.
Yeah, no, it's something so a lot of the I find Bokoblins and the Guardians are pretty easy. Mm-hmm. But I find especially with geese and stuff like that, the bats, it's been a little bit more difficult, I found.
Yeah.
I have no problems with the Guardians or whatever, but there is
I hated the Guardians.
difficulty jumps. So it's been fun.
Yeah, it does. As you get companions, it does take some aggro away from you. That certainly mitigates things. But yeah, you can't just absorb hits like that. Oh, I did I forgot to tell you this beforehand, but do you have a favorite weapon fusion yet?
I really like fusing swords together to make bigger swords. It's the best.
Yeah. I've been fairly basic with my stuff. Usually I just put horns on them from the enemies. I'd like to find out some like crazier stuff, but I do. Okay, no, I will say one. The beam emitter, if you put that on a boomerang and throw it, it doesn't do much damage, so it's not really useful, but it's fun as hell. Then you throw the boomerang, and it shoots a laser circling around all the time. It's really neat. But yeah, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, I think we move on from Zelda, right? Any final thoughts on? Like, we're probably gonna talk about this game again, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I have really not a whole lot of thoughts, only because I'm not very far in the game, just because I've been working so much. But like, it has been a really good time every time I picked it up.
I love it. I think they outdid Breath of the Wild, which I don't even know how they did. Like, Breath of the Wild was in that GQ list, that controversial GQ list.
Yes.
They named the #1 game of all time, and not that GQ named it. They went to a bunch of people like Jeff Grubb and Hideo. I think Kojima was a contributor to it, and Neil Druckmann. And a bunch of people in the games industry and journalists about the games industry and YouTubers and stuff, and just kind of got a consensus poll. And Breath of the Wild won, which, obviously that's kind of just a popularity contest, but it means something.
Hey, people like it. People like that game.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody told me that Breath of the Wild, before Tears of the Kingdom out, if somebody told me it was the best game of all time, I couldn't argue too hard with them.
Yeah, me neither.
And now I think they've topped it, truly, which is amazing. And everybody, and it does really feel like a moment where everybody's playing this thing, especially the first couple days. Man, it was crazy. Like, you saw discussion of all other games just stopped.
Yep, and now it is this game forever.
Yeah, it's all over TikTok. It's everything. It's wow. Like I said, 10 million copies in 3 days. I think Breath of the Wild sold 33 million. Something. It's off the top of my head, so I could be getting that exactly wrong, but like 33 million ever, and it's sold a third of that already. It's nuts.
Very true.